this is probably exactly what you need. Tonight we're going through the entire origin of League of Legends. Not the meta, not the patch notes, not the tier lists, the actual story. How a small group of modders built something that would eventually become one of the biggest games on the planet. We're not rushing. There's no quiz at the end. Just a story told slowly about a game that changed everything. Here's what I find genuinely fascinating about League of Legends. It didn't start as a product, it started as a passion project. A mod, technically, for a game that most people had already moved on from. And the thing about passion projects is that they either die quietly or they take over the world. There's very little in between. So tonight we're going to trace the whole thing, from a custom map in Warcraft III to a game with over 150 million players. We'll talk about the people who made it, the decisions that shaped it, and the moments where everything could have gone wrong, but somehow didn't. Take your time with this. Let it wash over you. To understand League of Legends, you have to go back to 2002. Warcraft III Reign of Chaos had just come out, and it shipped with something that Blizzard probably didn't think twice about at the time, a map editor. Now, map editors in strategy games weren't new. StarCraft had one before it, but Warcraft III's editor was different. It was powerful enough that people could essentially build entirely new games inside the existing engine. And that's exactly what happened. A modder known as Yule created a custom map called Defense of the Ancients, DotA. The concept was simple. 2 teams, 5 players each, defending their base while trying to destroy the other team's base. Each player controlled a single powerful hero with unique abilities. It sounds obvious now. It wasn't at the time. The map spread through Battle.net like wildfire. But here's the thing. It was messy. There were dozens of versions floating around, made by different people, with different heroes, different balance. Nobody owned it. Nobody controlled it. Then a modder named Steve Feek, his handle was Gwinsu, took the most popular elements and consolidated them into a single version. DotA Allstars. This became the definitive version, the one everyone played. Gwinsu added Roshan, the big neutral monster. He added recipes for combining items. He built the framework that would eventually become the foundation of an entire genre. But Gwinsu eventually moved on, and when he did, a young developer named IceFrog took over. IceFrog. This is the name that matters. IceFrog was meticulous, obsessive even. He balanced heroes with surgical precision. Every 2 weeks, a new patch. Every patch, dozens of tiny adjustments. Not because anyone was paying him. He did this for free, out of pure dedication to the game. And the community noticed. They always do. When someone cares that much about getting the details right, people feel it. Even if they can't articulate why one version of a mod feels better than another, they know. They vote with their time, and they were spending a lot of time on IceFrog's version. Under IceFrog's stewardship, DotA became the most popular custom map in Warcraft III. Millions of players, tournaments with real prize money, a competitive scene that rivaled full commercial games. There's something quietly remarkable about that. A free mod maintained by one person in their spare time, generating more engagement than most games with million-dollar budgets. That tells you something about the power of understanding what players actually want. And that's where our story really begins, because a few people looked at what IceFrog had built and thought, what if this was its own game? Brandon Beck and Mark Merrill met at the University of Southern California. They were both gamers, not casual gamers, the kind who stayed up until 3 a.m. arguing about game design over cheap pizza. They saw what was happening with DotA. They saw the numbers, they saw the passion, and they saw something that the big publishers didn't see, that a free mod built by volunteers was outperforming most commercial releases. So in 2006 they founded a company, Riot Games. The name was intentional. They wanted to make games that caused a stir, games that disrupted. Their first hire was Steve Feek, Gwinsu himself, the guy who had built DotA Allstars. That was a statement. We're not just making a DotA clone, we're making the next evolution of it. Then they brought in more talent, developers, artists, designers, people who had been part of the DotA community, people who understood what made it special. The studio was small, a handful of people in a cramped office in Los Angeles. No track record, no reputation, no money to speak of. Just an idea and a team that believed in it. The game they were building was called League of Legends, Clash of Fates, later shortened to just League of Legends. The design philosophy was radical for the time. Free to play. Not free to try, not free with a demo, completely free. Every champion, every map, every mode, free. This was 2008. Free to play was not a respected business model. Most Western developers saw it as cheap, Asian, not serious. The idea that you could build a competitive, high-quality game and give it away was borderline heresy. But Beck and Merrill understood something that would prove prophetic. If the game is good enough, people will pay for cosmetics. Not because they have to, because they want to. It's a subtle distinction, but it matters enormously. When you force players to pay, you create resentment. When you let them choose to pay, you create loyalty. That single insight would eventually reshape the entire gaming industry. There's also the matter of timing. In 2008, the gaming landscape was very different. World of Warcraft dominated everything. Console games were the prestige format. Free-to-play was associated with low-quality browser games. Nobody in the Western market had successfully pulled off a free-to-play competitive game at scale. Riot was betting that they could be first, that if they moved fast enough and built something good enough, they could define the market before anyone else got there. That kind of bet requires a particular kind of confidence, not arrogance, genuine confidence born from understanding the space better than anyone else. Beck and Merrill had spent years in the DotA community. They knew what players wanted because they were players themselves. League of Legends launched on October 27, 2009. The servers almost immediately buckled under the weight of players trying to get in. The game was rough. Let's be honest about that. The client was buggy, the servers were unstable, the champion roster was small, around 40 heroes at launch. The graphics were functional. Not beautiful, but functional. But the gameplay was there. The moment-to-moment experience of controlling a champion, working with your team, making split-second decisions, it felt right. It felt like DotA, but smoother, more accessible, less punishing. And the free-to-play model worked exactly as Beck and Merrill had predicted. People started buying champion skins, not because they needed them, because a cool skin for their favourite champion felt like a reasonable way to spend $5. There's an interesting psychology there. When something is free, the barrier to entry is zero. You try it, you play a few games, you find a champion you love, and then naturally you want to express that attachment. A new skin for your favourite character isn't a transaction. It's a form of self-expression. That's why it works. Within 2 months, League of Legends had over 1 million registered players. Within 6 months, it was the most played PC game in North America and Europe. Riot had to scramble. More servers, more champions, more balance patches. The team grew from dozens to hundreds. The cramped office gave way to a proper studio. But the real growth engine wasn't the game itself. It was esports. Riot did something that no other game company had really done before. They built the competitive infrastructure from the ground up. Not as a marketing afterthought, but as a core part of the game's identity. Season 1 Championship in 2011, a small event in a convention centre in Sweden. Prize pool $100,000. It was modest, but it was organised, professional. It set the tone for everything that followed. By Season 2, the prize pool was $2 million. By Season 3, Riot had established the League Championship Series, a permanent, salary-based professional league. Players got paid, teams got structure. The whole ecosystem matured almost overnight. That matters. That genuinely matters, because it created a feedback loop. Professional play made the game more exciting to watch. More viewers attracted more sponsors. More sponsors funded bigger tournaments. Bigger tournaments attracted better players. Better players made the game more exciting to watch. And around it went, each cycle making the whole thing bigger than the last. One thing that sets League of Legends apart from almost every other game is the sheer volume and variety of its champion roster. At launch, there were about 40 champions. Today, there are over 160. Each one is unique. Each one has a distinct personality, a backstory, a place in the world. And the world itself, Runeterra, is genuinely rich. It's not just a backdrop for gameplay. It's a living, breathing universe with its own history, its own conflicts, its own mythology. Take someone like Jinx. She's not just an ADC with high damage. She's a character with a complete narrative arc. A girl from the undercity of Zaun who lost her mind and became a force of chaos. Her relationship with Vi, her sister, is one of the most compelling dynamics in the game's lore. Or consider the Demacian and Noxian conflict. It's not just red versus blue, it's a philosophical clash between order and ambition, between tradition and progress. Garen and Darius aren't just opposing warriors, they represent fundamentally different worldviews. And then there are the deeper stories, the ones that unfold over years of lore updates. Kindred, the twin spirits of death, one a gentle lamb, the other a relentless wolf. They're not just a cool character concept, they're a meditation on how different cultures understand mortality. Or Aurelian Sol, the cosmic dragon who created the stars but was tricked into servitude by the aspects. There's something genuinely melancholy about that, a being of infinite power, bound by a promise made in ignorance. Riot has invested heavily in storytelling over the years. Comics, animated shorts, novels, and eventually, Arcane. The Netflix series that proved game adaptations could be genuinely great television. Arcane was a revelation, not because it was based on a game, but because it was simply excellent television. The animation was stunning. The writing was nuanced. The characters felt real in a way that game characters rarely do. It won multiple Emmy Awards. It was one of the most watched Netflix series of its year, and it brought millions of new eyes to League of Legends, not as players, but as fans of the world. That matters. That genuinely matters, because it proved that the universe Riot had been building for over a decade was worth caring about on its own terms. You didn't need to play the game to love the characters. You didn't need to understand the meta to be moved by the story. There's another side to League of Legends that's worth talking about. The community. Online gaming communities are complicated. Everyone knows that. The anonymity of the internet brings out the worst in people, and competitive games amplify that tendency. League of Legends has, at various points, had a reputation for toxicity, but it's also produced something remarkable, a global culture that spans languages, continents, and demographics. Professional players who are genuine celebrities in South Korea, fan artists who have built entire careers around League characters, content creators who turn their love of the game into media empires. The K-pop group KDA, for example, a virtual band made up of League of Legends characters. Their debut song, Pop Stars, hit #1 on the Billboard World Digital Songs chart. A music video featuring animated game characters outperformed most real artists. That's not something you can engineer. That's something that happens when a game becomes big enough that it transcends its own medium. League stopped being just a game years ago. It became a cultural platform, and the esports side only grew. The League of Legends World Championship became one of the biggest annual sporting events on the planet. The 2019 finals drew over 100 million concurrent viewers. For context, that's comparable to the Super Bowl. The prize pools grew into the millions. Stadiums sold out. Franchise slots in the League Championship Series sold for $10 million each. Then more. All of this from a mod, a custom map in Warcraft III, built by volunteers for free. There's a lesson in there somewhere about the nature of value, about how the most important things often start as hobbies, as passions, as things people do because they love them rather than because someone is paying them to. It hasn't all been smooth, of course. No game survives for over a decade without facing serious challenges. There was the issue of the original client, built on outdated technology, held together with what the community lovingly called spaghetti code. It was slow, buggy, and prone to crashes. Riot eventually rebuilt it from scratch, a project that took years. There were balance controversies, champions that were too strong, too weak, or fundamentally unfun to play against. The community is passionate, and passionate communities have strong opinions. Every patch brought debates, arguments, and occasionally genuine outrage. There was the question of new player experience. As the champion pool grew and the meta became more complex, getting started in League became increasingly daunting. Riot has worked on this problem repeatedly, with varying degrees of success, and there were broader industry challenges: the rise of battle royale games, the emergence of new competitors, the constant pressure to innovate while maintaining what made the game special in the first place. Through all of this, Riot has done something that many game companies struggle with. They've evolved without losing their identity. The League of Legends of 2024 is a very different game from the League of Legends of 2009, but it still feels like the same game. The core experience, 5 players working together, each controlling a unique champion, fighting for objectives. That hasn't changed. That's a difficult balance to strike. Change too little, and the game feels stale. Change too much, and it loses what made it special. Riot has managed to walk that line for over a decade, and that's no small achievement. So that's the story, or at least the beginning of it. A mod built by volunteers in a Warcraft III map editor, a company founded by 2 college friends who saw potential where others didn't. A game that launched rough and grew into something nobody could have predicted. What I find most interesting about the whole thing isn't the business success. It's the fact that at every stage, the people involved were just doing what they loved. IceFrog balancing heroes for free. Ginsu building the original map because it was fun. Beck and Merrill quitting stable careers to chase an idea. That's the part of the story I enjoy the most. If this helped you relax, if it helped the room feel a little less quiet, then it did its job. There's a subscribe button somewhere on this page. No pressure. The video will still be here tomorrow. Take care of yourself. Good night.